Linda Sidhu, welcome to Woman Owned.
Hey, thank you so much for having me here.
So, I wanted to kick off with your woman owned story. Tell us about how you got started as a woman owner.
I guess I actually have to take it back to when I was in pharmaceutical sales because a lot of what I do now was because of what I learned back when I was in sales for pharmaceuticals. So we'll just start there. First of all, I actually instead of I kind of leapfrogged into the industry. So what you're supposed to do as a sales representative is get into general doctors. And what happened was I actually got a job in dermatology. So I was calling on specialty
Mm.
doctors, which is a little bit more advanced. And I was actually really scared. It was like imposter syndrome, out of my comfort zone kind of thing. Everything we do as a woman-owned business owner, right? Is just like par for
Yes.
the course. But what happened was my company at the time taught me how to understand the DISC personas, and I ended up getting certified in DISC. And because
Mm.
of that, oh, another big component was two of the top 10 dermatologists was actually in my territory. And
Mm.
they did research for my products, they did research for the competitors' products. So I was basically like, well, who am I to come in here and tell them what to do? So once I really understood how personalities worked, I understood how I could actually communicate with each
Yeah.
doctor. And so for the next, I don't know, 20 plus years, I started to people read, specifically doctors back in that day, but still I people read to this day to really understand who am I talking to? How do I communicate with them? And how can I ultimately sell something if it's something they're interested in? So, knowing that background, I ended up being a top 10 sales representative in pharmaceutical sales for pretty much every year. But my husband and I, we were originally in the Midwest, moved to Seattle, and I had to start with a new company. And eventually, I ended up retiring in pharmaceutical sales. We ended up having a baby, and at that time, I decided I wanted to launch my own business because I didn't want to do pharmaceutical sales anymore. But I did take what I learned and I started creating quizzes because I really felt like the only way I know how to sell to someone is if I understand their personality so I can communicate really. And so I got known for creating quizzes, but I about this year, it was about a year ago actually, around this time, I started to pivot into more community building, facilitating community. And I really do think there's a common thread in there, which I don't know if we'll get into or not, but it's really understanding people,
Mm.
understanding that we're all different and we have strengths and weaknesses, learning how to communicate to people so we can, communicate and let them know what we have, what options we have to work together. It makes it really easy, but this is all comes back to like engaging, experiencing people, building trust, which is what I do now.
So this approach has been kind of the golden thread throughout, it sort of got started when you were a brand new pharmaceutical sales rep. You experienced imposter syndrome and you were like, the thing that I do know how to do is to connect with people based on their style. So it really became about kind of listening to people, paying attention to them and communicating with them in the way that they'd like to be communicated with. This became the foundation of how you build relationships that are win-win, that create a lot of both sort of meaning, but also economic value. And so this has kind of been like the golden thread, whether it's been in pharmaceutical sales or as you launched your business, building out a quiz business whereby you help other entrepreneurs communicate with their audience in this targeted way. Do I have that right?
Yes, that's exactly it.
Yeah. So what's really interesting is that a lot of entrepreneurs and leaders will talk about, your network is your net worth. It's so important to build your network. Um, and I think what's very cool about the kind of story that you're going to share with us today and the experience and case study is very specifically like how you leveraged your community and your relationships to ultimately produce a multi six figure launch the first time that you launched your own mixer mind it's called.
Yes.
So we're gonna really focus in on that, because I think it's a great sort of case study and exemplar of how having the relationships beforehand knowing how to leverage them during, and using relationships to continue to create a great customer experience can really help you generate new sales, increase your frequency of purchase, and basically create a great customer experience overall. So we're
Yes.
going to dive into that. But before we get there, why tell us a little bit about um, what the mixer mind is so that we know what people are, the thing that you're selling, the thing that you're launching, and that we're going to debrief. Tell us a little bit about what this is.
Yeah. So a mixer mind is a combination of a mastermind and a networking experience. And the reason why I kind of feel like I found a gap in the market, really, as a business owner, the only way you could purchase an offer from somebody is through masterminds, group coaching programs, services, products, whatnot. Then there was other ways to build in networking, which was usually live experiences or virtual experiences. But what I found when you joined a mastermind, you were joining somebody that was like the guru or the expert. And then everybody else had to sit around and kind of listen, take their advice. And but what I found was in a lot of those groups, we were all experts. And nobody had a chance to really talk as much as the expert did, which is totally fine.
Mm,
We are all in a position. I've joined masterminds before and I've had great experiences. But eventually you get to the point where you're like, I don't know if I really need a mastermind anymore. I kind of want to just leverage partnerships. I want to talk about the behind the scenes of what's going on with my peers. I want to have honest conversations that I don't know if I'm actually getting inside these groups, right? The other thing was, I didn't know as a woman entrepreneur, I think the last time I looked at this, 11% of business owners who are women are actually making over six figures. The price tag for a mastermind is usually, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, you name it. Um, and if we want more women-owned business owners, we almost have to like lower the price sometimes because the price point is fairly high. And so for those up and comers, people you have to bring the elevator down to bring them up, they may not be able to afford a mastermind. It might actually put them out of business.
mm,
So this was a way that I thought, you know what? We're all experts. I don't want people to think I'm just the expert. I don't want to charge a hefty price tag for that. What I'd rather do is like normalize it, bring people together, let's network, let's get the behind the scenes and let's be experts together. And so that was really the idea. And I felt like it was a gap in the market because there wasn't really anything refreshing and innovative like that at the time last year.
mm. So you launched this thing called the Mixer Mind, and so the idea is that you bring a group of peers, particularly those who maybe they're at a phase in their business where, investing in a high ticket program is just they're not at the revenue level where that's kind of negligible. You know what I mean? So they
Actually,
want to be able to, yeah,
it's
because that's their
actually
big,
the
yeah,
people who are joining could potentially pay thousands of dollars, to be honest with
yeah,
you. It's just
yeah.
they don't want to do masterminds. If they do want to, then the price point is still at a point where they could have their cake and eat it too, and they could do both.
Nice. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But there are rules for the mixer mind. I do think it's really important to attract the right people and repel the wrong people. And
yeah,
some of the things that were really important was having a platform. In order
yeah.
to partner and collaborate with somebody, you if you're looking at a soccer field, I know you like soccer. I used to play soccer
I
too.
do.
If you're looking at one side of the goal, the other side of the goal, then there's the half line, right? In my idea of a great partnership or a win-win-win is when both teams can actually collaborate and connect, right? And then it's
Yeah.
also really focusing on the audience too. So
Mm,
it's a triple win when you can partner with another entrepreneur and really focus on an audience that's going to benefit from the partnership. So what does
yeah.
that mean? It means you have to give and you have to receive. You can't just always receive and never be able to give the opportunity. So you do have to have some type of platform where you can shine the light on some other entrepreneurs and
Yeah.
also give that light to them. Does that make sense?
It does. And so the foundation of it really is, hey, this is one part, it's an opportunity to uncover new potential collaboration partners who are vetted so that it's kind of strength meets strength, which is always a great way to form a partnership. Number two, it's a place to have kind of honest conversations about how business is going. And number three, the price structure makes it an easy yes.
Correct. I just want it to be like a no-brainer.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, cool. So that's the offer. I think it's just important because as we start to talk through the launch, then people kind of know what the foundation, what this launch was all around. So you decided to launch this offer when?
I launched it, well, I had a beta group the
Yeah.
year prior, and that
Yep.
was the year that I unfortunately found out was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, which ended up playing a huge role in how I
Yeah.
ended up launching the Mixer Mind. But I officially launched it November of 2023. So last fall was when we
Yeah.
really, kicked it up a notch and made it official.
So the year before you kind of launched a beta and you were starting to figure out just to kind of test out this idea that you have where you saw the gap in the market. So you launched the offer, you're testing it out, you're running your beta group, then you get this life-changing diagnosis. I
Yeah.
mean, and what impact? So I'm sure it had a massive impact on you personally, in so many ways. One of the questions that I had as I thought through this was, I mean, how did it shift how you started to look at the growth of your business or how you would grow your business? Like, did it change, how did it change your plans around how you might launch, the sort of the proper launch, like the hard launch of your Mixer Mind? I'm curious what shifts you made given a dramatic change in your personal circumstances.
Yeah, this is a really good question. So I got diagnosed with thyroid cancer March of 2023. And prior to that, I was just doing personal invites for my beta. And I ended up gathering a group of 27 individuals. And so that was really the group we started with. And then immediately after that, I had to deliver the news that I had thyroid cancer. Now, the good news is it was a good diagnosis. Everything was supposed to go as planned. It was the gold standard. Be happy you have this type of cancer because it's treatable and you're going to be okay, is the news I got. However, I ended up having three different surgeries. We don't need to get into all of that, but one of the
Yeah.
surgeries was actually an emergency surgery because I had a hematoma that developed. And so it was a blood clot in my throat that had collapsed after a surgery. And I remember, in that moment, I was actually supposed to be hosting a group call. And here I'm on the way to the
I'm
hospital because
laughing
I,
with you, not like, for those who are listening to the podcast version, you won't see it, but on YouTube you will. Just as somebody who hosts calls, and I mean, there's lots of people who are listening who host calls, like we can all relate to that moment of like,
right?
yeah,
Because it's so funny because when you go to launch something or when you go to do something important, like of course that's going to happen, right? So I ended up going to the hospital. I have a hospital about 5 minutes away. I was in an emergency vehicle going straight to a different hospital to get emergency surgery, and I actually texted a few of the girls in my program, let them know what was going on, and asked somebody to just host the call for me. And of course, not one but two people immediately took action. And after that surgery, I had lost my voice. I needed about 6 weeks of recovery time. This was all stuff that had happened that I didn't actually see coming. And
yeah,
so in that moment, I thought to myself, so I had a huge perspective change. First of all, I realized if I don't have my health, I don't have my business. So the focus became on me and trying to clear my calendar to actually heal from everything that happened and give myself space and grace to do that. Secondly, I started to think about what I really wanted in life, and I had a massive perspective change because, quite frankly, if you could actually Google hematoma, thyroid cancer, thyroid, all that, people have actually died in that situation. Thank God I didn't. But I did think that morning when I looked at my son, when I had to leave for the hospital, I wondered, is that the last time I'm going to see his face? And because of that, when I woke up after the surgery and I knew that I had a second chance in this life, massive perspective shift had happened. And the two things I thought of was, am I living the life I want? Am I seeing? Am I doing? Am I checking things off the bucket list? Because the next time I'm in this situation, I better be ready to go, not saying I'm not ready yet. The other thing I really wanted in my life was, am I getting outside of my comfort zone? Am I doing more pinch me moments? These are when you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe my life. I can't believe it's real. I can't believe what I'm doing is real. Pinch me. This cannot be real. So that also included getting outside my comfort zone, doing things that were courageous, doing things that were brave, but also getting in the room with people that I wanted to like, that I felt like was a pinch me moment in itself. And so after that shift, I realized I don't really want to do quizzes anymore. I know I'm known for that, but I'm now realize I'm going to be so much more if I
Yeah.
really double down on this community. And the reason why the community aspect played a huge role in this is because they didn't send me flowers. They could have. Some of them did, which was really sweet. But what they did was they got money together. They sent me grocery cards so I could get grocery delivery. They also helped me get dog walkers for my dog because I couldn't walk my dog. So the money that they had raised went to all these little things that I needed on a daily basis. The other thing that they did was host Zoom calls. And so in that moment, they
So
weren't
these
just
were
a community.
members. Yeah, these were members of your program.
Yes, of the beta group, correct.
Yes,
Yeah, and
very oh,
so
wow. Yeah.
in that moment, I realized, yes, we can partner and network and lift each other up for our businesses, but in that moment, they became my lifeline, and that
Well,
was
I
the
think the
power.
yeah, and I think there's something else that's very unique and interesting about what you're talking about because what ultimately happened is what you want to have happen inside a community, which is where the community itself creates a spirit of accountability.
Mhm.
And that is not always easy to accomplish in a collective environment because often, in a collective environment, it can be, well, that's not my job. That's somebody else's job. That's the big challenge, in like society generally. How do we get people to take ownership? And what's really cool is that it sounds as though that was sort of the intention all along, but this experience that you had really sped up the degree and pulled into acute focus the degree to which the community, if it wanted to survive, it had to step up.
That
you
is
know?
so true. Yes. And
Yeah.
a big component to this of what you're talking about is a lesson I learned through this. And
Yeah.
people want roles. People enjoy
Yes.
jobs. So I've realized for
So
the
fascinating.
evolution of the mixer mind, this year we actually have peer pod leaders and
Yep.
they host peer pod calls for little mastermind sessions on the side. The other
Yes.
thing that I'm realizing is I'm hosting a retreat in Cabo in November for this program as well. And I'm giving people jobs for that as well, because that is the part of a community. That's where you feel like you have a job. It's really, I don't know, it's just this beautiful component of
Like,
a
what would
true
be an
community.
example? Yeah, what would be an example? So the hosting peer pods, which is very cool. What would be an example of like a job that somebody in the community would have at an event? Like, can you give us a couple of examples that people can visualize? Because it's a really cool concept.
Absolutely. So I actually have somebody helping me coordinate the event together. And so we're almost going to tag team it. Yes, I'll be contributing to part of it, but she's also
Yeah.
going to be basically the MC and help guiding it along. So that's her job. Another job is I'm going to have someone gamify the event. So maybe she's going to host the games that we do, for instance, like a bingo card or posting on Instagram and prizes. And so she's going to have that job as well. And maybe we even have a job where we make sure nobody's left behind or left out. And there's somebody kind of
Yeah.
always watching to make sure that people feel included.
So cool. Okay, that is very neat. So I want to actually go back to the very beginning, and there's so much to kind of break down here. So what I love is you've sort of given us a glimpse inside the program itself and the product itself, and like here's how I've started to really put community at the core, which I think is very cool. I wanted to go back to even before the cancer diagnosis and when you were soft launching it, your beta group, one of the things that you said is you reached out to 27 members. I believe that's what, did I get that right?
Yes.
Yes. So you reached out to 27 people to get them into the beta group. I know that there's a lot of folks who are listening. They could be doing millions in consulting already and may want to look at pulling together some form of a community or some form of a group program themselves. And even that, you know what I mean? That part, even if they take that one part, I reached out and I got 27 people into my beta community to start with. Could you break that down and give sort of any tips about how you did that? Because sometimes it's even those sort of straightforward things that people can sometimes be like, I just kind of need to understand how you would do that. Like, did you just email them? Because I mean, the interesting thing about being a quiz specialist is that you're also choosy about what you use complicated funnels. Not that
Yeah.
quizzes need to be complicated funnels, but you're often very direct, you know what I mean, and relationship based. So can you just give us a taste of like what that looks like to kind of reach out and launch a beta group just by kind of talking to people?
Well, I think first things first is really establishing an intention for the group. Like, what is
Mm,
the purpose of bringing these people together? And I'll just use the example of my retreat. The
yeah.
purpose of the retreat in November that I'm doing is really to create deeper connections for established entrepreneurs. And so, based on that purpose, every decision I make, I go back to say, are we fulfilling this purpose or not? So, one is just establishing the intention. Two is making sure that you have rules. So, who is a good fit? Who is not a good fit? It is really, really important to repel the wrong people and to make sure that you get the right people to protect the group as a whole.
Yeah.
And I think of like Fight Club, for example, that movie where it's like,
Yes.
but it's true. You really should have some type of rules. So then who do I ask and who do I not ask, or who's a not yet. And so
Hmm.
once you base that decision off of, okay, you start to compile a list of people that you think would be great. One thing that I did is I started to host virtual mixers. So I allowed them to experience what I was trying to pull together. And so I would host these little virtual experience groups. They were able to experience it. What experiences do is they help you build trust and they
Mm,
allow you to get a taste of what's actually going on so they could say hell yes or hell no. And so from that
mhm.
moment, that's what I did pretty much to really call in the right people and make sure that those were the individuals that got asked and then kind of go from there. And so the Evites, I did do a lot of them via email. I
Yep.
also love Voxer. I really love Voxer. So I connect with a lot of people on Voxer. Voxer has actually been a huge component of my
Mm,
marketing this year. When people joined the Mixer Mind, I asked them on the thank you page to connect with me on Voxer, and immediately I welcomed them to the community. I'm so excited you're here. And we just hit it off straight away with a great conversation. Like, how wonderful is that type of welcoming to your community, too? And so that was really what I did. And I I think, and then from there it
So you
was
reach
just
out to
really,
people in your network that so first, so step one, so this is like we're talking still about the beta launch, folks, if you're listening in. So step one around the beta launch was really, okay, what's the purpose and intention of this group? Who is a great fit and who should not be in this group? And so you're sort of anchoring in that clarity first. And then basically you use that as a rubric to take a look at the relationships you already have. This person definitely no, this person hard pass, this person 100% yes. And so you're either emailing them or sending them a message through Voxer, letting them know you've got this thing. Did you send them to like a landing page? Did you send them to a Google Doc? Like even that, like to that level of detail, how did you get people to know about this initial round?
I did have a sales page, come to think of
Yep.
it, but the when I
Yeah.
officially launched in 2023 November, I actually had a Google Doc. So I was still
Yeah.
trying to put the sales page together. So,
Yeah.
Google Docs are a great way to launch communities because I feel like they're very trustworthy. Like, it's not perfection.
Yeah.
It's just like, here's the information.
Here's what it is.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think either way, if you have a fancy sales page or if you have a Google Doc, all you need is just information and allow them to make the decision to,
Yeah.
yes, they're in or no, they're not, and a way for them to check out is,
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
works.
Yeah. So cool. Okay. So you also talked about so between the kind of soft launch of your beta group and then the bigger launch that we're going to be debriefing here in a second in October or November 2023. October or November?
November.
October. November 2023. So between then, is that when you hosted virtual mixer minds or virtual mixers,
So I
virtual
did
groups?
occasionally invite people who I had my eye on to come and
Yeah.
experience it.
Yeah.
And then it was easy to just, be like, hey, do you want to
Yes.
join? I'm reopening the doors. This year, I haven't done that. I've kept it pretty much community only.
Yep.
But I did learn a lot for last year. When we got into the launch, I realized that people need to experience this because it's something that people haven't experienced before. So
Yes.
I did open house events where we essentially did exactly what we do inside the Mixer Mind on an actual event. And then at
Yes.
the end, I just told them about it and asked them to join. And I actually had a 20% conversion with my open houses last
That's
fall.
amazing. That's amazing. Okay, so you know in your mind, hey, we're going to open up registration officially for the Mixer Mind November 2023. And so in advance, kind of walk us through because again, it was your community. And we know at this point, your community is all already taking huge ownership, like running the calls, having jobs, supporting their leader who's in recovering. So there's a lot of great things that you have already kind of flipped a switch in terms of placing, creating an environment where it is incumbent upon people who step into this environment that they take ownership of the environment, which is very, very cool. You decide to, I'm going to relaunch it. And given what you're going through, you're like, we're not going to do the like massive, complicated tech, but we're going to leverage what's already here, which I love. So walk us through. So what were the components of your launch? So you had open houses. What else did you have to create the kind of success that you had ultimately with your the November launch of the Mixer Mind?
I thought at the time, how could I go wrong if I focus on a peer-to-peer invite where we actually
Mm.
vet each other?
Yeah.
And so originally, when I was getting into it, I was like, I always want to focus on quality over quantity.
Yeah.
So that decision alone
Smart.
made me weed
Yeah.
out. I don't want to send an email to my list. I don't want
Yeah.
anybody to send an email to their list. I don't, it literally has to be peer to peer invite only. And
Yeah.
that's the tactic I'm going to trial this time around. And it was a little nervous. I was nervous about it because no one I knew was actually doing a launch like that.
Yeah.
Another component to that decision was I really just didn't have the energy. I
Mm.
literally just went through 3 surgeries and radioactive iodine treatment, and I just was like, I don't think launches have to be that hard. We keep putting
Yeah.
more on our plate. What if I actually take stuff off?
Yeah.
And so those were the 2 reasons why I decided to go with a peer-to-peer invite. And then what I did is I put together 3 open houses. I
Yep.
had 5 of the Mixer Mind members as a panel, and
Mhm.
just asked them to invite their peers. And I figured if you invite one person, we could double this community.
Yeah.
And so that was the thought. And I kept saying to myself, I don't know how this could go wrong. I think this is just a beautiful experience and really focusing on the right people. Ellen Yen was a huge component into the community. She actually had me on an interview for her podcast, and she was joining the community the following year. And since she doesn't do a mastermind, she thought it would be a great way to introduce this concept to her community and
Yeah.
invite some of the people that she wished she was in a mastermind group with and have them join the community. And so the only other resource besides these 3 open houses that people had was this interview that I did with Ellen Yin. And so we used it
Who
as
is
a
herself
resource.
a great community builder. You know what I mean? She's just an incredible relationship builder and networker. I love Ellen.
Ellen's amazing, and a
Yeah.
huge component to why we created so much magic together is I call her my magic match. When you have a magic match, when you're partnering with other entrepreneurs, you've heard me say this before, but
Yeah.
there's 3 people you can technically partner with when it comes to having solid collaborations. It's your clients, it's your peers, and it's your mentors. And
Yeah.
the reason why these collaborations are so successful compared to people you don't know very well is because there's a established trust that's built. And so
Yeah.
a magic match is when a mentor hires you and they become your client. And then through all the experiences together, you actually end up peers. And
Yeah.
that's what happened with Ellen and I. There was just so much trust. She knew me so well. And I think she's even told me I'm the most person she's collaborated with on the podcast in I think we've collaborated like 3 or 4 times at this point. And it's just a beautiful relationship. So I'm really trying to focus on strategic relationships moving forward. So long term, mutually beneficial relationships. And I'm really
Mm.
trying to teach this to entrepreneurs in general because I don't want people to collaborate and partner just to do it. I want them
Yeah.
to really create like the long term, the long game, and really focus on strategic partnerships.
Well, I mean, I think, as somebody who's been doing partnerships for a long time, what I've experienced is it's just kind of like with anything else, it's kind of like 80-20. So a lot of times you end up, you're initially meeting people and, forming relationships or initial acquaintances with lots of different people. And then through that, you start to identify, as you're talking about somebody who could potentially be a good partner. And then you start to find there is that magic match. There is somebody where you're like, hey, for whatever reason, there's not only is there a big alignment of values, but when we partner, really cool things happen. Like there's sort of this big, you're greater than the sum of your parts. There's a ton of energy, there's a ton of mutual benefit. Let's keep partnering. So I agree because I think, in a great partnership, you are like, committing, very often. And so it's mostly fun, but there are certain commitments. So I've definitely experienced that where it's kind of like the 80-20, the Pareto principle. And what you're really looking for are those relationships where it's just a great partnership. It doesn't mean that the other partners aren't great. That's not what I'm saying, but it's like there are some that you're just like, hey, this is quite magic. And it sounds like you have identified, a few of those. So just to sort of recap, so when you did this launch, you focused on peer to peer. So basically, you looked at these sort of 27 core people that you had gotten yourself through direct outreach, and you're like, it's going to be a peer to peer recommendation. So we're going to host an open house. I'd like we're going to have 5 of our members on a panel, but I would like you guys to each invite at least one person that you would like to be able to network with and have inside your community, da 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 da. And so they do that. You're on Ellen's podcast and she is becoming a member. So she's kind of putting her capital behind it, her sort of social capital behind it and really sort of spreading momentum that way, which is very cool. Were there any other, ways that you activated your relationship, your network and that sort of peer-to-peer reach out around this fall launch?
Well, Ellen and I, we were debriefing as well at some point this year. And one thing that
Mm.
we realized that we tag teamed on and did very, very well is we utilized Voxer together. So if somebody in her community didn't know who I was, she would introduce me to them on Voxer and we would
Oh,
chat about it.
so
Right.
smart.
And the best questions I would always ask these individuals, because to be honest with you, even when I was in pharmaceutical sales and to where I am today, I actually don't want to call in the wrong person. I'd rather,
No,
just make sure it's
no,
the
no, no,
right
no. Yeah,
person for all of our
totally.
sakes, right? So I am
Yeah,
not one to ever focus on like quantity. Like I never was. I was always about
yeah,
quantity, quality, sorry. I've always
yeah,
been
yeah,
about
yeah.
quality. And because of that, I love to ask people like, well, tell me about you. Tell me
Hmm.
about your audience and then what are your goals for this year? And then based on that feedback, I would actually be able to say, okay, you're totally going to be a great fit into this community, or maybe not yet. I
Hmm.
also called out a lot of this information on the sales page. And I
Yeah.
do remember in some of the open house events, there was people in there that might not have been a not yet, right?
Hmm.
And they were
Hmm.
able to actually read the sales page and realized based on the way I'm communicating to them that maybe it's not a good fit for them yet. And they actually opted themselves out. It was
Yeah.
very rare that we actually got somebody to join that might have not been a good fit. And honestly, I don't think anybody was not a fit. Do you want to know why? It's
Yeah.
because I feel like they had the confidence to say, you know what, I'm going to take my business up a notch. And I'm not
Hmm.
just a notch, I'm going to take that elevator and go as high as I could go. And they had that confidence and they were like, why not me? Today's the day. And
Mm.
so those were the people who ended up joining. And
Yeah.
I can see it right now that like everybody who joined the community was exactly the best fit. It's a
Mm.
perfection.
Yeah, that's really great. Okay, so when we go back and take a look at this approach, so in the beginning, so on the one hand, it's certainly something you don't necessarily have the energy to do a launch kind of the old-fashioned way. So you're looking for innovations and you're looking for how can I make this easy and fun? So you start to identify. So the sort of golden rule that encompasses all of this is peer-to-peer invites. And so to do those peer-to-peer invites, you do a series of open houses where you are really leveraging the existing network you have. And again, you're putting the onus on them. Hey, you guys tell me, who do you want to mastermind with? Bring them in, which I love. And I hope people are listening to this. Like this is it's kind of another way of looking at ownership. And when there's a collective sense of ownership, because I think that's actually the strategy. From my perspective, as I'm looking, it's like the collective ownership strategy, you know what I mean? And how you start to create an environment like that and how that starts to do the work for you. And I say that, I put for you in air quotes because there's a tremendous amount of work and intention that you put into setting this up. Like it is not, you know what I mean? That's definitely there. So, so what were you expecting was going to happen? You know,
Well,
when
I
you thought
think
about what did you think was going to happen with your
well, I
launch?
think that you hit the nail on the head. It was a way we could co-create it together.
Yeah,
And I felt like if I took this approach and we co-created this environment together, I actually thought in my heart of hearts, how could
yeah,
this go wrong? Like, this is going to
yeah,
be so amazing. And to be honest with you, I've never hit any of my goals up until this point. Like I
yeah,
always had like I want to
yes,
have this many people join or whatever.
yes,
And or I want to make this amount of money or, and never hit the goal. And it was always fine. Like it was just like,
yep,
oh, I got what I received and this is all I could take care of anyways, kind of thing. But what
yeah,
happened when I actually went through the launch, okay, we had the three open houses. It was a Wednesday,
yep,
Thursday, Friday. By Friday, we had already hit 50 people. Now, one of the approaches I did was I asked the people in the beta group to join before the open houses. I gave them all these incredible bonuses, a
yep,
free ticket to the Cabo retreat, dinner the day before the retreat starts, and I think $500 off the program that it was going to be. And
yep.
so I think I got 20 out of the 27 to
Oh,
rejoin.
let's go, girl. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So that started my pre-launch momentum. So even when the open house started, we were at 20 people and I was like, this is
Yeah.
great. Even if I double this, like I'm pretty much double where I was last year.
Yeah.
And so then the open houses events happened. And by that Friday, we were at around 50, 55 people that had joined. And I started to have people reach out to me on Voxer like, oh my gosh, Linda, I think this is like a multi six figure, or I think this is a six-figure launch, right? How many? Because they started to see. Oh, one other thing I did that was really cool is I created a
Yeah.
Google document of everybody who joined. So you could actually see who was in there.
Awesome.
I thought that was
Could
really
they
nice
see it
because,
before they joined?
correct.
They could. Oh, cool. Because that
Yes.
is the question that people would have, particularly when there's that level of community emphasis. It's like, who's in there? I love
Yeah.
that. Very smart. Yeah.
By that Sunday, so 2 days after that Friday, I was just under 100 people. So it had doubled over the weekend. And
Yeah.
I think I told you this before. I think my stomach sort of got upset because, I was like, whoa, this happened
When
so
you
fast.
exceed your expectations of yourself, and you create a new level, it's
Okay, right? Like, I was like, can we just talk
exactly.
about that for a minute?
Yes. Yeah, yeah. That's
So then
so
I felt like
cool.
I quantum leaped over the
Yeah.
weekend, and there was the multi six figure lunch right there. And then I had to take a moment and just step back and say, you know what, Linda, you've got this because the only thing you have to do is facilitate the community. And that is what my purpose in life is. That's what I do so
Mhm.
well. And so at that point, I felt really good about everything. And I kind of came up with a strategy on how I could facilitate that
Yeah.
moving forward. And so I felt good. I felt great. And it's been such a fun experience.
What was the biggest challenge for you personally as you went through this? So I'll give you a little bit of an example. Some of the thing, one of the things that can sometimes be challenging for CEOs is when it's like, can it be this easy? You know what
Mm.
I mean? Or like, can I allow it to be like this? And I'm curious, did that ever come up for you? Because as you're kind of walking through, and I want to really sort of highlight and make sure like there's a lot of innovation and ingenuity in terms of how you set this up, which I think is very cool. But there's also a lot of just a real willingness to lean on the asset that you created, and that asset is the community, and to allow that community to generate itself. And to me, that's like a real kind of allowing a real, and I'm curious. So I'm curious, was that challenging for you?
I'm so excited you asked me this because I don't think anyone's ever dug into this component of the launch. And
Mm,
it goes back to actually my diagnosis with cancer as well, is the ability to receive. For the longest time, I have a child, I have a husband. We live out in Seattle. We don't have family here. I remember telling myself, I can never get sick. I can never get sick because I have to take care of my family. If I'm
yes.
not okay, my family's not okay. If I'm not happy, my family's not happy. And so a lot of decisions I started to make in my 30s, I didn't drink much. I started to
Mm.
exercise a lot. I started to eat really healthy. I was very mindful of like who I let in my space and who I didn't. So I was almost building that muscle
Yeah.
of like where I had to be in 2023. And so once 2023 came and I realized, oh my God, I have cancer.
Yeah.
um, I cannot take care of my family. I'm gonna be in the hospital. I'm gonna have to rely on others. It was really scary. And so a lot of the things I had to work with in the beginning of the year was like receiving, the ability to receive help, the ability to ask for help. And so in those moments, I will never forget, when I had Liam in the hospital, when we moved to Seattle, I had no one come and see us. I didn't have a meal train. There were those moments in life that community was not there. But in this moment in 2023, I started to ask for help. I had a meal train delivered for 3 weeks from my son's school. I had my community helping me out with Zoom calls. I had neighbors dropping off pizza so my family could eat as well, right? So there was a component of I am receiving, I am receiving, and then also having to ask when I needed help. And that was the hardest part, I think, of 2023. And so when I went into the fall where I was actually launching and I started to get scared of the launch as I was going into it, I'm like, oh my gosh, we got to go. The train's leaving the building and I have to do this. And I just remember in order to see the stars, I had to walk outside of my house and look at them. So I had to walk the walk, I had to talk the talk, and I had to do this. And I
Yeah.
kept saying, I am receiving. This is,
Mhm.
I'm okay to do this. This is the moment. And so remind myself because I built that receiving muscle all year. I leaned back onto that. And I think that's what's so hard about women. We have a
Yeah.
hard time to ask for help and we have a hard time receiving it.
Yeah, you know what? That's so true, and I love because 100% because I think it is that asking for help and being willing to receive it when it comes, without guilt. Like yes, 100%. Like this makes tons of sense. The other thing that occurred to me as you were sharing that was that as a leader, so often what our job is to outsource or to delegate ownership. So, there's a phase where you're delegating tasks or, could be with somebody who's not ready to have tons of ownership. But usually as a leader, the goal is to delegate ownership. And, what I'm also seeing is like created kind of this, you created the vision, you created the intention, you created like the rules, you created the ideal who, and then you set that in motion, and then you sort of have really been able to delegate ownership, to the members itself, which is the heart of a member, driven community. But it is very innovative. It's ingenious, born out of necessity, continuing to scale out of just a really great fit, so it's very, very cool. Is there anything about this experience, of launching in this way that you think is really important to mention that I didn't ask you?
Well, I think what's important and what I realized is that people are overdoing it. They're putting way too much on their plate and they really can just simplify things. And if they
Yeah.
really take a look back and be like, what is the purpose of this? And then
Mhm.
make sure that everything that they're doing is connecting back to that purpose, then really establishing some rules around it so that they know who to call in. And then to be able to say, okay, how do I need to launch this in a successful way that feels good to me? And just really focus on those components and just dialing it back is the biggest takeaway, I think, for an entrepreneur, because I think we're shifting in a phase where women are on the rise. Women are going to have to do step up. We're ready to step up, but we also, what I think the most beautiful thing about it is women have this opportunity where it's like the rising tide lifts all boats,
Yeah.
where we could also learn to lean on each other and, take a page out of that book.
Yeah. Such a fantastic example. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We're going to have a bunch of links in our show notes to where people can find out more about you, but just kind of verbally for auditory people, where should they go next if they want to connect with you, get in relationship with you, and learn more about the work that you do?
Yeah, if it's okay, I do have a quiz that people can take where they
Yes.
can get on my email list. I prefer to chat with people via email. That's my favorite platform. And I did create a quiz. It's what's your visibility it factor? And the idea is where you could take the quiz and understand what type of strategies work for your personality so you can gain more visibility and ultimately create more partnerships for your business. And it gives each personality a strategy based on who they are. And then they can also find me at I am Linda Sidhu on Instagram as well. Thank you.
Beautiful. Okay, and the links for that, guys, if you're watching on YouTube, it'll be in the description. If you're listening on a podcast, it'll be in the show notes. Thank you so much, Queen. I appreciate you and really applaud the innovation that you've applied in terms of how you're creating and growing your community, and really appreciate the generosity with which you've taken us behind the scenes to kind of break it down and share what you did and how. I know that people are going to walk away with, with a couple things that they are probably going to be doing a little differently. So I appreciate you.
My pleasure. And thank you for having me here. You are a mentor of mine. I look up to you, and everything you say, I'm always like nodding my head because I really think that everything you say is in alignment with my beliefs as well. So this was amazing to be here with you today. So thank you.